Hey everybody, welcome to Advanced SQL / SQL. I love it. SQL is it's at once an acronym and an initialism, just depending on their context. So anyway, welcome. Whether it's SQL or SQL, stop being afraid of it. We've got Stephanie here. Tired of it.
Lifesaver.
Yeah, we're gonna show you some tricks, and hopefully, if you haven't taken the dive yet, start now. Follow along. We're going to be using this on inventory 15, and yeah, let's go ahead and kick it over.
We're looking for it now.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Do you want to kick off, or do you need me to kill some time by talking?
No, I'm ready to kick off.
Rock
you
on.
Ready to kick off? All right, cool. So if you guys have seen some of the SQL snippets videos in the past, we've kind of went over how to create a SQL reports folder. So I made a specific folder just for this webcast specific use case.
Confusing your use case.
Yeah,
your
use case when, I got code all in my brain. So,
there you go.
So we're going to start off repeating a fairly simple query, but a little bit more advanced when we're talking about joining tables. So we'll start out with that. We're going to hit our join query here.
I see you've got a query that's actually, a report that's actually just called join.
Yeah, I named it join.
All right.
I mean, is that...
Go ahead and move that up a little bit. Let's center this window.
Okay, let's go ahead and...
Let's look up there and make it a little smaller. If you can see right up there.
Yep, I can see it. Should we make it...
No, you look up. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you drive.
Got a rookie. There we go. Rock on.
All right, so let's actually get all of this in the pane, right? Okay, there we go.
All right.
Okay, here, so we're going to go over a join. And what we're doing when we're talking about a join, and we're taking one table and another table that have the same column name in each table, but we want to pull columns from each table and we join them through that same column, right?
The primary key.
The primary key, correct. So you could look at this like as a Venn diagram where you have one circle and another circle that interjoin,
They have some crossover.
And we're only going to take that little part in the middle. And that's kind of how you can consider an interjoin or a join here. In SQLite, we're just going to go off of a join.
So the two tables we're going to do, I take it, are computers and applications, or?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to join computers and applications, and we want to see the computers that are online. That's all we really want to pull. And we want to see how many applications are on them. So we're going to look for a count. And you can see this here on app count. We pull other things like the publisher, the version. We're going to group it by the computer name, specifically so we can see that count. And then we're going to order it by the count in a descending order. So we're going to see the computers with the highest applications on, and then order it from highest to lowest.
And as long as they're online.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, online only.
So the select has got those, but you had to do that join applications. And by the way, notice that she's got... after it says from computers C, what she's doing is just giving an alias to the computers table, so that whenever you're doing your from, or when you're declaring those tables, if you just put one or two or three letters, whatever, after that with a space between you, that's considered an alias. And now, in this case, C, from here on out, C period will be shorthand for computers.
Right. It's a big time shortcut. Saves a lot of time when you get a little bit more into advanced queries, which you'll see like towards the end of the webcast. We have some really, really long queries. And we'll give you an example of when it's used, when it's not used.
Okay.
So for now, we're calling computer C and applications A. And we're saying we're joining applications using the computer ID column, because there's a computer ID column in the computers table and the applications table. And that's how we're joining the tables together.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and run this report, and we can see that we are getting all of the columns that we asked for.
Yep.
We did alias the name column from the computers table to computer, and we see that here. And we did that because there's also a name column in the applications table. So we just do that so that there's no syntax error. It calls it something else, and we get the results that we need. So we did ask for a count column, and this is what we get here. We see that Rick Sanchez 2 has 54 applications on it, and then we also asked it to order in a descending order. So we're going to see...
I'm interested why you would show, in this case, I see that you've got the name of the application and the publisher, but we're talking 54 applications, so you're just grabbing one application from Rick Sanchez 2 and showing it.
Yeah, so this could be something where we can take that off.
Yeah,
sometimes it will auto-populate that. That may be like irrelevant. So we could really just kind of
When you start doing the counts in this case, I would
just take
for me,
that
I would
away.
say lose specific application information because we're just saying Rick Sanchez 2 has 54 applications. There's no reason to show one of those applications.
Right, that's a good point.
And really, whenever you use the group clause, you're going to lose the individual, applications or whatever it is. So
Right, so it could just be kind of anything that auto-populates
So,
there. So
maybe
if we
lose a
change
publisher
that.
and version as well.
All right, so let's get to that. So one thing we have to remember with SQL is the very last column that you include does not have a comma after it. So if we're going to lose the publisher and version, we also need to lose the comma on the very last column
Which is the count.
requested. So we're going to run this again. We're only going to find the computer name and how many applications are on them.
Yeah,
Cool.
I like that.
So
may
that's-
I try something real quick?
Sure.
So if you wanted to add something that, instead of the many applications, you want to say, oh, show me the name of the computer, the number of applications, and which OS it is, we've got, go ahead and type in
C.OS.
C.OS. You can either do OS
version?
name or just OS. Just do OS.
Okay.
And then run that. And it'll be the short name. The OS is the short name. So we see
So-
that Rick Sanchez 2 is 10, whereas Heineken is Windows 7.
Windows 7.
Yeah.
And then also a little reminder tip is that you see over here that you have all the tables. If you need a recap on which columns are in those tables, you can always find that table in this little square. So let's go to computers, and then as soon as you click on that, all of the columns auto-populate here. So if we wanted to say,
How about the last scan time?
yeah, let's
if you
go find.
if you wanted to say, hey, I know there's 54 computers on this, or 54 apps on this computer, but when was the last time it was scanned? Then you could just look at the last scan time.
So let's see, scan status.
I think it's last scan. Go to L,
LLs.
I believe.
Less offline, less online.
I was wrong. Maybe
a little
maybe
bit
scan
easier.
time.
Yeah, I was in scans, but scan status, scan errors.
Clearly, we worked this out beforehand.
Successful scan date. That's
Successful
what we're
scan
going to go
date.
off of, yeah. So we can say.
So she's adding a period there, or a comma, and then you're going to do the. It's in the C. It's in the computers
data.
table, so C is the alias. Successful scan date. I like that.
And you can always press F5 to instead of hit run report. F5 is like a little shortcut.
All right, and we can see that Rick Sanchez 2 was scanned at 8:22 today.
This morning.
Good deal.
Cool.
I like that.
Awesome. And then let's go back to defined. We want to keep this as it is. We can keep it. Let's
Let's
just
keep
save. So now we're going to jump out of this report. And the next one we're going to work on is the limit. So there is a little bit of a difference in SQLite than SQL Server, right? So some of you may be familiar with SQL Server Management Studio versus SQLite. Lite is obviously-
Microsoft SQL Server uses what's known as Transact SQL or TSQL. And one thing you'll notice from whether you're working with like Oracle, PL/SQL and Transact SQL, if you look at a Venn diagram, those circles representing each are almost completely overlapping. There are some syntax issues and differences between the different types of SQL, and a lot of that has to do with different functions and different ways that you can manipulate the date and time and stuff like that. But for the most part, if you just get your basic SQL down, the language, you can work on any SQL-based system. But go ahead.
No, that's a really good point. So there is a little bit of a limitation towards SQLite that doesn't exist with SQL Server, and one of those is that in SQL Server Management Studio, we could use a top function in the select clause area. So say we wanted to see like the top 5 computers that have been scanned, or so on and so forth, top 5 of anything, right? We can't really do that. SQLite doesn't support top. So in
You can get around that.
replacement, they use what is called the limit clause, and that's at the very, very bottom. So there is an order of operations that the SQL clauses go in. Limit goes on the very, very end, and it says, okay, hey, I want to limit my results to 5 rows. So the way that we could see, like, for instance, we're going to run the computers table. We are going to join the computer scans table because we want to know the last successful scan date of these computers, and we want to know in a descending order. So we're going to see, like, the most recent scan, and we only want to know the top 5.
And by doing the descending order, now your limit is the same way of getting that top.
Top 5.
Here you're just doing it 2 steps. do an order with a descending
Right.
and then a limit.
So here we obviously abbreviated the computers table again with C. So we're going to click, select this computer name. The last is online time column and the successful date scanned from the computer scan table, which we joined using the computer ID column, which again is another similar column in both the computers and the computer scan table together. We are going to order it by the successful scan date column, and we're going to descend that order because we want to know the most recent down, and we want to limit that to 5 rows, so we only get 5 results.
And if you wanted to reverse it, then it would be ascending ASC, Alpha Sierra Charlie, and instead of DE in desk, you just do ASC. Anyway, go ahead.
And then on that, if you don't use an order by clause, it will automatically order your results ascending. So you
actually you don't have to call it out. Yeah.
Right. So here we go. We see the top 5. We limit it to 5 results. And we see if we were to look at the timestamps on here, these ones kind of scan at the same time, but we see that we are definitely ordering in a descending order by the successful scan date column. And we start with Rick Sanchez too.
Cool.
We've got 5 results.
All right.
We also see this down here, 5 rows.
All right, I think we have a question.
Dear Shane and Stephanie, do you have any tips on making some of the more complex SQL queries a bit simpler to write? Thanks, Mary M.
Hello, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Yes, I mean, one thing is using aliases to make it easier to read. Also, like calling all the tables that you're going to reference, giving them, abbreviating to C or A, whatever.
Yep.
That will make it a lot easier, honestly, to write. But
Some of the queries are kind of just, you kind of have to explain it out, or else you might get skewed results, which is like unvalidated data.
correct.
However,
There might be a couple of ways. We probably need more context for that question. Like, hey, I'm trying to pull this information. Here's what my script looks like. Is there a way to optimize this? Is there an easier, maybe we could use a sub-select as opposed to a join because the join actually isn't necessary in this case.
Right.
Something like that might help.
so we actually will show you a couple queries towards the end of the webcast that do show an instance with like registry entries where they had to run 2 different reports. We were able to use a case when statement to only run 1 report, and we'll actually see that coming up here. So we are all set with limit. We didn't really change anything, so we can.
Do you want to do that? You said you want to do that one now? You want her just to skip ahead, JJ?
Actually, that's
no, I think
actually
I've
the next
seen that
one.
on 3. So
Yep.
All right.
that's why I said let's do it now.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So we're actually going to do the case when. So here's actually an example of that. This might be a little confusing. This is a
I'm
little
going to
bit
show
more.
you. Here's one thing. Now notice every time she opens this, by double clicking on it, it actually runs the report. If you don't want to run the report and you want to just directly go into edit mode, that's when you can right click and go to define report. You can also hit Control F8. By doing that, it won't actually run it. It will just open it up in the define or the edit mode.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So let's make sure you guys can see this entire query.
Just make sure that you can look up there and make sure it doesn't go beyond what we've got.
Okay. Is that good? You want to get out of here?
There we go.
All right, cool. Okay, so in this instance, we are going to use a case when statement.
Okay.
This is a little bit more advanced, but it does make things a little bit more simplex. If you can, and all of this, by the way, will be in the bonus content. So
And when you're doing a case statement, it's kind of like saying, in the event of whatever, then do this.
Show us
So
this.
a case is if something matches what we're going to do here. So I just want to make sure you understand that. So go ahead and explain what we're showing.
Okay, so in this case, we are.
In this case statement.
Yeah. So we are going to use the computer table again. We want the computer ID. We want the computer name. We're calling it computer. We want to use the registry entries table, which we are joining. We're actually using a lot of joins here, and that is because we need to get to a column in a specific table that we can't necessarily reach with just a single join. So that kind of ends up being like a data model, but that's a little bit of a different case. So in this case, we want to see the last scan registry entry scan column, right? So we're going to use a max, which is an aggregate function. We're going to see the very last scanned time from registry entries table. We use max, we alias this last scan, and we're going to say for these values, for OneDrive and OneDrive setup.
Okay.
We want to see case when the registry entry name is like OneDrive or is OneDrive in this case, or OneDrive setup, right? We're using two. Then return the value, and we end that case when statement. Whenever you use a case when, you always have to use end, and that's just kind of telling the processor that's the end of that.
That's the end of this particular case. So here we're looking in. We've obviously got a registry scanner in a scan profile that's scanning, looking for OneDrive, and this query is saying, okay, you're going to look at all these registry entries that you scan, and there could be thousands of them.
Right.
Only return. That's where your cases are. Only return when this particular value name contains OneDrive. It's using like, but this is the same as an equal since you're not using a wildcard.
Right.
Is OneDrive or OneDrive setup. If it's not, if the name is not OneDrive or OneDrive setup, disregard it. We're not going to return that.
So we're also working off like software paths, right? Too? Path names?
Down there later on. Notice the alias there on those case statements. So instead of saying the value, or pardon me, the name, we're just saying we're going to call this OD or OneDrive, I assume.
Yeah, OneDrive.
OneDrive value, and then there's ODS, which is OneDrive setup.
Right. I mean, I could make it longer, but then it
Okay.
makes the column name really long. We could do that, but
The as is where she's defining that alias.
correct. And then we also want to include the registry path name, right? Where this is coming from, where it's located, and we do that from another join. So in order to get these pieces of information into the table that we want, we do have to join registry entries using the computer ID column. We join the registry paths using the registry path ID. We join the registry scanner entries using registry entry ID as well. Or entry ID.
And this, when you're using, this is shorthand, by the way. This using is shorthand. SQL devotees will go, what are you doing?
Yep.
You're supposed to make this a little longer to say where you're actually calling out each column and saying they equal.
Yep.
In this case, when you're using the using, it's very important that you get the sequence right because you're joining, you have to have those primary keys that exist in all those tables. In this case, if we tried to jump registry scanner registry entries above,
Correct. You'd have a syntax error.
Yeah, we'd have a syntax error. Anyway, go ahead.
We could show that in a later video, I guess, like looking at a data model.
Might not be a bad idea.
Yeah. So we want to say where the scanner's name is like registry and the registry entry's name is like OneDrive or like OneDrive setup. Okay, it's very, very important that we do call that the same thing and not the alias name, or else you will get a syntax error.
Yes, the alias name is really you'll see this is you're basically saying this is going to be the name of that column. Is usually how it's used. So when you're viewing the report, you'll see OD value and ODS value.
And actually, one of the reasons for that is because when the processor actually execute or reads your script, it actually reads select at the bottom, even though we type it at the top.
It's got it necessarily because it has to do the joins first.
Yeah. So it's kind of something for another day, and we'll probably see that on the SQL snippets coming soon. So then we're going to group by computer ID first, and then registry entries name second. So when we do that, we're noticing that when we use these case when statements, it's actually going to create a column for each. So if it's OneDrive, you'll see this in OneDrive and then null on OneDrive setup and vice versa.
Okay. So you're going to run that report. So here we can see Guinness with OneDrive and OneDrive setup. The OD value. There you go. I like it.
Seeing the value here, so it's a little bit of your path. Or your shell here. And then if you see it here, you don't see it here, and vice versa. So it's just empty or null. And this was actually a special request. Maybe you can't really see that.
You could use a group. You could use a group concat if you only wanted to return one record for a computer and concatenate OD and OD setup.
Right.
If you wanted, but I think we're going to cover group concat soon.
Yeah, we did.
Later on.
Okay, so let's go ahead. We didn't change anything, so we can jump out of that. And hopefully that helps. There are certain ways to kind of make typing out clauses a little bit simpler, and that's abbreviating, aliasing, using the using instead of in join and SQL Server. It's a little bit longer.
It is.
So the using is actually really, really.
Yeah, we can jump. I want to show you guys a great report that you'll see some real time value or some value in your environment. But do we have a question before we want to jump on that?
Dear Shane and Stephanie, what is a good website or book to read for a beginner in SQL? I like to learn new things to make my job easier. Sincerely, Jeremy C.
You know,
grab it?
I can go. Is it in your
my
office? I tell you what, you keep on talking. Jeremy,
Someone
I'm gonna run and grab.
Here.
I'm gonna grab one
Kelly's
from my
gonna grab
office
it.
as well.
Okay.
All right. So
I'll jump in and mention what my favorite resource is. I use W3 Schools a lot. It's like a great reference and a great tutorial. It goes through like everything. So if I'm trying to figure out how to do something and I Google how to do it, it's usually one of the top results anyway.
So obviously their internet is also a super strong tool. The Tube of You is also, YouTube University is also really great. We do have a couple of great books here that are really good for SQLite, which we'll show you live on the webcast. If you are interested in kind of taking like a course, an online course, it's probably $10 to $15. If it's more than that, then don't do it until it's on sale. But udemy.com, super great place to learn anything like that you could possibly like imagine. You could even learn how to like draw a stick figure on there. But they've got pretty much everything you can need. I'm sure they have SQLite on there too.
all right, I'm going to show you so Jeremy, to answer your question, this I mentioned in the pre-show when I had to jump into SQL, I was kind of put in a sink or swim position years ago, and it's time to learn it. And I grabbed this book called SQL Fundamentals. It's from John J. Patrick, and this was a game changer for me. I learned so quickly. I didn't have to read the whole book before I was already using it in the real world. I ended up devouring the book, but this SQL Fundamentals, and this does break down into different types of like the Transact SQL and PL SQL, stuff like that. But just the fundamentals was fantastic. This is the one that Stephanie was mentioning. It's using SQLite, and obviously we've mentioned many times our database is SQLite.
Yep.
It is the most popular database because it's actually in the public domain. It's well supported in the community. It's not even open source. It's public domain. So there's so many applications that you use guaranteed that utilize SQLite. It's everywhere, but it is kind of a thinner version. Doesn't have all the bells and whistles of really a full contact relational database. But SQL Fundamentals and using SQLite from O'Reilly.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that.
Anyway.
Hope that helps.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next query, we are going to give an example of, say an employee no longer works for a company or a user is no longer with,
I had this actually happen to me. I was working, can't give too much information, I was working for a government institution, and there was a felony that had been committed or suspected by a person who's now in prison, so I guess I could say was convicted. But the FBI came in and they said, we need to know every computer that this person's ever logged on to. Maybe you have an employee that has left and you're wondering the same thing. What computers has this person ever logged on to?
Right.
Well, of course, in Windows, when you log on, a profile is created. So we create a scanner in using the scan profiles, a registry scanner, to say we're going to look in HKey local machine,
right,
under software, Microsoft. We're going to look for profile list. And we can even, we'll show you that scanner if you want in a second, but grabbed all the profile list keys in the registry and all those values, and now we're going to reference them to say, let's find out which computers someone's logged on to.
right. So when we build this report, it looks fairly simple, but it actually can give you a lot of data. So that's another beauty by default. So we are going to use the computers table again. We want the computer name, and we alias that to computer. We want the registry entries table, and we want the value. We are going to concatenate these values and call it values, and we're doing that because we just are going to see all of those in one column, separated by commas. That's our delimiter.
Do you mind if I'm going to run reg edit real quick?
Oh, yeah, it's up.
Just, this can get a little confusing for some people. When we say values and name, So obviously these are keys right over here. If you can, these are the keys. This is a value name, like profiles directory, and then the actual registry entry. The value is this. So the name is profiles directory. The value is system drive users.
Right.
Go ahead.
So we are actually going to say we did another join, right? We're joining the registry entries using the computer ID column. And we're going to pick on anybody.
Yeah,
With
we have
Mac.
Josh. We
What?
have Josh McElpring.
Josh, you're the weakest link today. Sorry.
And now she's actually using wildcards. So
Right.
in SQL, wildcard is a percent sign. And you'll use, when you're going to use wildcards, you need to have the operator like.
Right.
There are things as equals or not equals, but equals and not equals, generally, depending on how you have your database set up, case sensitivity could play a factor in that. But when you do a like in SQLite, SQLite immediately uses the like and does a case insensitive. But %Mac % just says any value, when we're looking for profile lists, where that username contains MACK.
Right. So we're saying anything before, as long as it has MACK, and then anything after. We're going to group it by the computer name, and we're going to run this report.
Josh is going to jail.
Breaking the law, breaking the law. Judas Priest was here last week, so still have that in my head.
So this is where you see the concatenated column here that we called values. We can see that Josh has been on this computer, Allen Rails.
Let me bring this down a little bit.
Okay. He's been on these computers in a couple of different environments, right?
And you could actually look at you might be able to do some other mining in the registry to find a timestamp or something. But this is simple. We now know that Josh, or I shouldn't say Josh. Got to be careful of the definite article. We know that the account Josh.McElpring logged on to the computer Allen Rails and Beth and Bird Person at some point.
Right. So he's actually been on 28 different computers, and that's just 28 different computers because we concatenated. So he may have been on all of these computers. He's definitely been on all these computers, but he's also been on some of them with two different values here. So .web and without .web.
So he's got two accounts.
Right.
Basically, he's got a web domain account and then another. Yep. That's cool. I like that.
So this could be definitely helpful for any sysadmins that kind of go through
Yeah,
that
if you're,
on the daily
if you're
as
wondering
well.
what this person left, and it was not a mutual departure, and you want to suss those out, maybe grab those computers and figure out if there's been anything compromised. This is one, and look how simple this query is. Is this in the content?
It is.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, it's very simple.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
Really simple, lot of data. Okay, so last one that we are going to cover today works with a report showing applications and computers, and we're also filtering by a collection.
Okay.
Correct? So let's make sure that we can get this all in the screen.
I've noticed a lot of a lot of you will have your favorite SQL editor as well, and some of it might be like Notepad++. Others might actually use, like I like to use SQL Maestro because I actually connect to the database and I can run the queries, not just check the syntax like in Notepad++.
Right.
You can also write it in here and test it, but this isn't the best IDE, if you will, because it doesn't give you the syntax feedback that a Notepad++ or a Microsoft the SQL Studio or anything will do.
Sometimes those other programs will colorize, like they'll make it different colors.
It just makes
like
it
easier to read.
Makes it easy to see syntax errors. But anyway, go
Right.
ahead.
Okay, so for this one, we really went. This one we didn't use abbreviations, right? So we didn't actually say computers to C,
Yeah.
right? So this is actually a good example of how much longer. Look how complex this query looks. You know how much
Just
longer it
compare,
could
yeah.
take you to type, and how much bigger it actually looks. So
Yeah.
So I might be weird, but for me, not abbreviating it is more clear. It's because I can just see like the whole thing. I know more
Yeah.
specifically what I'm
Yeah.
dealing with.
That's fine.
and that makes
Yeah.
total sense because that's kind of how you start, and then
Okay. So here we've got computers and applications. We're joining applications using the computer ID,
Right.
which is the primary key. So that's really the one you're going to use the most, everybody. And then we're joining the collection computers, right?
Well, we're doing a subselect, right? We're introducing a subselect.
Oh, I just jumped
Oops.
right past that. Sorry, yeah.
So we are introducing a subselect, and so what we're going to say is like where the computer ID. Did I
Yeah,
miss
right here.
that?
So it's
okay.
in our very first where clause, we're saying where the computer ID is in, and in is a way of saying I'm going to run another query. This is called a subselect.
Right.
I'm going to run another query
Inside of a query.
inside of a query. So we just say where the computer's ID is in, and then you need to select the computer ID in your subselect select.
Correct.
And So
Still
you can
say
see where-
from computers. Now we need to join collection computers. We're
Okay.
using that computer ID. We are going to join collections using a collection ID. That is a column that is similar for collections to collection computers. And inside here, we're saying, and the collection's name is either Opera or Firefox. And we're using that wildcard. So anything before Firefox, as long as it contains Firefox, anything after. So we're going to say that. And it's going to limit us even more. Down here, it looks like it's a lot more complex than it really is. We're just going to say that the applications name are not like these certain applications, like 7-zip, Abby Fine Reader. It does not equal to accelerometer, access help. It's not like AccuAge, etc., etc. So these brackets that look like
greater than, less than.
yeah, greater than, less than, alligator things. That just means it's not equal to.
I guess
at
it's
all.
less than, greater than.
Pac-Man signs, okay? And then we're ordering it by the application's name first, and then computer's name second. So when we go ahead and do this, it is going to show us results that, let's go ahead and expand some of these.
Because you've got the.
It's going to show us some of these computers and applications that are in the Opera collection or the Firefox collection,
Okay.
anything with Firefox in it. And that's kind of how we get that. And then it also excludes any of those applications that were in that list of application is not this or it's not like that.
Okay.
Hope that makes sense a little bit. Sometimes we do have some requests for reports where they want to see what are in these collections, what's in that one, but I don't want to write two different reports. That's kind of the point of doing a subselect in a query to make sure that we can get all that information on one report so that they don't have to do it two times.
Gotcha. Cool. We have a question?
Dear Shane and Stephanie, you mentioned in a previous PDQ Live that reporting on multiple items is possible with SQL. My question at the time was counts of Bitlockered laptops, non-Bitlockered laptops, Bitlockered desktops, and non-Bitlockered desktops. Can you discuss this type of report? Thanks, Shakal S.
So if you're going to be looking at counts of you probably want what he's saying is I want to show
Yep.
not the names of the computers, but my report will say here are the laptops that are Bitlockered.
Yep.
The number of them, so 17. The number of desktops that are Bitlockered,
Right.
110, and then
Non.
for the corollary you got your non-laptops and desktops. And I just want it looks like he's saying I just want 4 returned rows of counts.
Right. So
Yeah,
you
this-
could just count that and group it by that as well, or it might just automatically.
This would be yeah. So I do remember this question. It wasn't that long ago, and I wish we would have had time to actually write this one out.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically your select is going to be using a bunch of different counts and subselects where you're saying, give me the count of BitLocker computers where the computer ID is in, and then you're going to say you're going to look at the chassis type that's in the computers table. The
Right.
chassis is going to be like laptop or desktop, and basically that subselect will return a number, and that number would be the count.
Yep.
Effectively, right?
If you can, if you want to go ahead and send that over to us, so we can dive a little more deeper into that. Look
Well,
into
let's.
it.
I think with that question, Shakal, and thank you for that question. With that question, I think we could probably write that, and by we I mean you.
Video
Right now
perhaps?
on site.
And then we'll throw it out to you. We might just reach out to you, just to reach out to you specifically, Shakal. All right. Yeah, that's not one that we want to try to fumble through now. Plus, I don't think we have on this domain any BitLocker anything. So
Yeah, it depends on.
you would see a bunch of non-Bitlockered. Anyway, everybody, thank you for watching. Please keep an eye out for SQL snippets with Stephanie and dive into it. You're going to see some limitations with the basic reporting. That's how it is. Basic reporting will cover almost all your reporting needs, but there are times you need to do a deep dive into SQL to get what you want. That's where Stephanie comes in. So she's going to help you learn how to do that, but it's only going to be academic unless you dive into it yourself. All right. So until then, we'll talk to you guys later. Next week we've got Moskowitz?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, next week we got Jeremy Moskowitz, the MVP. He owns Policy Pack and he runs GP Answers, Group Policy Answers. You've probably been on his site multiple times. If you do anything with group policy, he's going to be here in the studio, and we're going to be talking group policy. So
Cool.
Rock on, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you later.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. Congratulations, Mary M. and Jeremy C., winners of PDQ swag. Send us your information at webcast@pdq.com. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week.